This is Dr. Preston Lim Sako, and in Module 7, we will discuss data collection in qualitative research. This is part of our lecture series in Nursing Research 1. This module provides an overview of data collection approaches used in qualitative research, focusing on self-reports and observations. Now, data collection in qualitative research is usually more flexible than that of quantitative studies. The decisions concerning types of information to collect usually evolve in the research field. For example, as qualitative researchers gather and try to understand their data, they may soon realize that it would provide them better knowledge if they pursue a new line or focus of questioning when conducting interviews or when gathering new information. Although qualitative research data collection is fluid and evolving, still the researchers need to plan well for the data collection strategies, and they must prepare themselves for possible issues or problems that could arise later on in the research field. The primary method of collecting qualitative data is by interviewing study participants. Observation is used in many qualitative studies as well. For physiologic data, these are rarely collected in a constructivist inquiry or when conducting qualitative researches, except perhaps to describe the participants' characteristics or to ascertain eligibility for the study. Please take a quick look at Table 24.1 of Chapter 24 of Pollitt and Beck 2020. So as you can see, the table shows a comparison of data collection issues and the types of data used by researchers in the three main qualitative traditions, as well as other aspects of the data collection process for ethnography, phenomenology, and grounded theory research studies. So, generally, ethnographers typically collect a wide array of data, with observation and interviews as the primary methods. Ethnographers also examine products of the culture under study, such as documents, artifacts, photographs, and so on. Phenomenologists and grounded theory researchers, on the other hand, rely primarily on in-depth interviews, although observation and documents may also play a role in grounded theory studies. You need to be ready to face field issues when conducting data collection in qualitative research. One important issue is gaining trust. Qualitative researchers must gain and maintain a high level of trust with participants and must strive to achieve empathic neutrality. Another issue is preparing for the intensity of data collection. Collecting high-grade qualitative data requires deep concentration and energy. The process can be an emotional strain for which researchers need to prepare, and this process can somehow help researchers cultivate emotional intelligence. It is also advisable that you collect data on your own pace that minimizes stress, for example, so doing one interview a day, not back-to-back interviews. You need to also engage in activities that help you release emotional stress, such as exercising, walking, running, hiking, baking, gardening, among many others in between interviews. You may also need to debrief about any feelings of distress with a co-researcher, a colleague, or an advisor. The third issue is emotional involvement with participants. As qualitative researchers, don't get too emotionally involved with participants. It's a pitfall that has been called going native. Researchers who get too close to participants run several risks, including compromising their ability to collect meaningful and trustworthy data, and becoming overwhelmed with participants suffering. Another issue is reflexivity. Reflexivity refers to researchers' awareness of themselves as part of the data they are collecting. Researchers need to be conscious of the part they play in their own study and reflect on how their own experiences can affect the data they obtain. Reflexivity can be used to enhance your in-depth interviewing skills. So how do you record and store qualitative data? Well, qualitative interviews should be recorded and subsequently transcribed, rather than just relying on interview notes. This is to help ensure that the interview data are truly the participants' actual verbatim responses. Note-taking can be a bit distractive during interviews, so it is best that the interviewer comes with an audio and/or video recorder. The interviewer is supposed to listen intently and direct the flow of questioning based on what has been said in the conversation with the participant. In addition to traditional audio recording equipment, new technologies are emerging to facilitate recording in the research field. And a recent innovation is the Smart Pen. It's a ballpoint pen with an embedded computer and digital audio recorder that can record up to 200 hours of audio. Some researchers use their smartphones to record interviews, which require special precautions to ensure the security of the interviews. The following are several types of qualitative self-reports. One is the unstructured interviews. Unstructured interviews are conversational and are the mode of choice when researchers do not have a clear idea of what it is they do not know. So phenomenology, grounded theory, and ethnographic studies may involve unstructured interviews, especially at the outset. Next is semi-structured interviews. In focused or semi-structured interviews, researchers prepare a written topic guide, which is a list of areas or questions to be covered with each participant. The interviewer's job is to encourage participants to talk freely about all the topics on the guide and to tell stories in their own words. Next is focus group interviews. In a focus group interview, a group of people, usually 5 or more, is assembled for a discussion, although some focus group discussions may be conducted online. Next is joint interviews. Joint or dyadic interviews involves 2 or more people who are simultaneously questioned using either an unstructured or semi-structured format. Now, unlike focus group interviews, which typically involve group members who may not know each other, joint interviews involve respondents who are intimately related. Diaries and journals. Nurse researchers have used health diaries to collect information about how people prevent illness, maintain health, experience morbidity, and treat health problems. Another type of qualitative self-report is or are photo elicitation and photo voice. Photo elicitation involves an interview stimulated and guided by photographic images. This procedure, most often used in ethnographies, is a method that can break down barriers between researchers and study participants and also promote a collaborative discussion. Researchers are also using an increasingly popular technique of asking participants to take photographs themselves and then interpret them. And this method is called photo voice. Photo voice can be used as a strategy to promote empowerment and give voice to the participants in addressing social and political change, and thus it's often used in participatory action research. Another type of qualitative self-report is video-stimulated recall interviews. This is used to explore how people approach social interactions. The researcher video records study participants engaging in various activities in social situations. And then in follow-up interviews, the researcher discusses aspects of the participants' behavior with them. Stimulated recall has most often been used in ethnographic research. Another is self-report narratives on the internet. In addition to the possibility of soliciting narrative data on the internet through structured or semi-structured interview methods, a potentially rich data source for qualitative researchers involves narrative self-reports available directly on the internet. The internet is a rich resource or source of interactive and socially mediated data, giving rise to what is called internet ethnography. Now, data sources can be found in Twitter, it can be found in Facebook pages, blog sites, and even Instagram. There are also other unstructured self-reports and that have been developed, and some examples include life history interviews, oral histories, critical incidents technique, and think aloud method. So how exactly are interviews done? Well, select places that offer privacy, that protect against interruption insofar as possible, and that are suitable for recording purposes. It is sometimes useful to let participants select the setting. Most qualitative interviews are conducted in person, but new technologies nowadays have opened up other options. For example, video conferencing makes it possible to conduct face-to-face interviews with participants remotely. Video conferencing is advantageous from the perspective of having both a visual and auditory record of the interview. However, you need to be prepared for possible connectivity issues depending on your geographical location or your participant's location. Study participants can also be interviewed asynchronously or not in real time, like via emails or on social media platforms. A distinct advantage of online interviewing is that participants' narratives are already typed, so thus avoiding the expense of transcribing recorded interviews. In an internet environment, researchers need to devote time and effort to crafting individual email responses to make sure all participants feel valued and understand that their narratives made important contributions to the study. Here are some tips on how to do in-depth interviews and post-interview procedures. First, researchers usually prepare for the interview by developing mentally or in writing the broad questions to be asked. Second, sometimes it is useful to do a practice interview or a mock interview with a stand-in respondent. Third, it is a good idea to ask sensitive questions late in the interview after rapport has been established. Fourth, if the topic under study is likely to elicit emotional narratives, tissues should be readily at hand. Fifth, using the first few minutes of ice-breaking exchanges of conversation before actual questioning begins. Six, a critical skill for in-depth interviewers is being a good listener. So it is especially important not to interrupt respondents, to lead them, to offer advice or opinions, or to counsel them. The interviewer's job is to listen intently to the respondents' stories. 7. Narrative disclosures can bring it all back for respondents, which can be a cathartic or therapeutic experience if interviewers create an atmosphere of concern and caring, but it can also be stressful. 8. The last questions in in-depth interviews should usually be along these lines. Is there anything else you would like to tell me? Or you can ask, are there any other questions that you think I should have asked you? Such probes can often elicit a wealth of important information. And last but not the least, or number 9, in closing, interviewers normally ask respondents whether they would mind being contacted again. So in the event that additional questions come to mind after reflecting on the information, or in case interpretations of the information has to be verified. And last but not least, recorded interviews should be listened to and checked for audibility and completeness soon after the interview is over. Unstructured observational data are most often gathered in field settings through participant observation. Participant observation is characterized by prolonged periods of social interaction between researchers and participants in the participants' socio-political and cultural milieu or environment. Unstructured non-participant observation. Not all qualitative observational research is participant observation. So some unstructured observations involve watching and recording behaviors without participating in activities. Now, on the whole, participant observation and other unstructured observational methods are extremely profitable for in-depth research, in which researchers wish to develop a comprehensive description and conceptualization of phenomena within a social setting or culture. Please post your questions on the open forum activity at your Seoul Virtual Classroom, or you may email your professor. Thank you.